welcome to all of you and for coming to our workshop. This is our community workshop sponsored by our Church of the Voice. We are a new church, 3 years old, and we are located right here in Bridgeport, and we are dedicated to serve our community and our neighbor. Especially if you live in Bridgeport, we want to welcome you because we are neighbors. I've been living in the city of Chicago for almost 20 years, and my daughter is now 18 years old, my son is 16 years old, and thank God they got through the messy CPS public school system fine, and my daughter is now in Urbana-Champaign, first year. And so I understand how stressful it is to be a parent in the city. How many of you have kids? How many have kids? How many have 3 kids? 3 kids. 3 kids, wow. How many have 2 kids? All right. How many have 1? How many? Well, I'm not going to ask you what you're expecting, but we're concerned about the needs in the community. That's why we want to organize workshops, something like this. And we want to host this kind of workshop periodically, regularly, so that our neighbors in the community are well informed. Especially the school system is all about your family, right? We want your family to do well. Today, our guest speaker is Jun Jing. She's the director of UCA Urban Christian Academy. It is a vibrant, growing ministry of after-school assistance to students. And you guys started 5 years ago, right? 6 years ago, and they started UCA 6 years ago with 1 student. Now they have grown to almost 100 students in their after-school program. And their ministry, I really appreciate, is dedicated to the holistic growth of children and students. And they actually work with not only the students, but with the families. June will give you more details later. And so we really appreciate your presence, and we appreciate June for coming to give us a workshop, and give her a hand. Right?
Are you going to translate in Chinese?
Yeah, I'm going to translate in Cantonese. How's that? All right? Cantonese. If you can't do Cantonese, you can do in English, right? So English, Cantonese. Okay, we will. It depends on the needs of the community. We will organize Mandarin translation later. So it really depends. So really appreciate your presence today.
Okay, ready? Ready? Is that the first slide? Can we move on to this? Next one. Okay. Good afternoon. I'm glad to be able to be here and to share with you about education in Chicago.
咁好高興咧，今日能夠嚟到你中間同你分享一下咧呢個芝加哥校區嘅一啲資料。
Let me start by introducing myself a little bit. I actually went through Haines School, so I went through the Chicago Public School myself, went on to Lindblom, and then went on to University of Illinois Urbana with an industrial engineering degree.
咁佢哋土生土長啊，咁真係咧喺我哋唐人街嘅 Haines School 嗰度咧上過學校，然之後咧一路長大就去咗咧Urbana-Champaign，然之後完成咗大學。
And I would have to say going to school when I was young was not as complicated as it is now.
咁以前咧學生嘅時候咧返學咧上堂咧就冇咁複雜。
So I commend you parents for staying in the city of Chicago.
咁所以咧非常之欣賞各位咧你嘅家庭你自己留喺呢個城市裏面。
I myself, I'm a mother of 2 boys. I love them dearly. They're 17 and 19.
咁佢有2個仔，一個17歲，一個19歲啦。
A lot taller than I am, but they're still my babies.
絕對高過佢，不過仍然係咧好似細路仔一樣。
And they went to a combination of private school and public school.
咁曾經咧佢長大嘅時候去過私立嘅學校，都去過咧公立學校。
So I have an appreciation for both types of schools.
咁所以咧佢對兩方面都有經驗嘅。
And then about 6 years ago, the Lord led me and a few other people to establish an organization called Urban Christian Academy.
咁大概喺6年之前咧，佢同其他嘅一齊嘅同工咧，就神感動佢哋開咗咧呢個嘅 Urban Christian Academy。
So what we have learned in the 6 years that we've been there is that there is a need to provide care and nurturing and an environment for kids who are not in school.
咁所以喺過去6年嘅經驗裏面咧，都一直去到學習咧喺學校以外點樣能夠培養到一個好嘅環境，讓學生能夠全面成長。
So most of the families we work with, they're working. You know, they're working long hours and into the evening.
大部分學生嘅家長咧都係要成日做嘢嘅，係雙收入嘅，所以咧成日都冇時間嚟。
So we fill in those gaps after school is over to the evening.
咁所以咧，佢作為一個嘅課後補習咧，就係放咗學之後咧，就照顧嗰啲學生，直到咧佢哋夜晚返學。
We also offer summer program.
咁亦都咧有夏季嘅課程。
And what I have observed when I watch our kids, how important it is to respond to their needs beyond just the academic.
咁咧喺佢兩個細路長大嘅時候咧，好學到咧個嘅需要就係咧唔單止佢哋學術上邊學生嘅學術上邊成績要成長，佢哋整個人都要成長。
We are the only Christian after-school program in Bridgeport.
咁咧喺僑港區裏面咧 ，UCA 咧係唯一一個咧係以基督教嘅精神嚟到去做課後補習。
And I think that makes a huge difference because we love our kids holistically.
咁呢個咧係一個好大嘅分別嚟嘅，因為我哋真係好關心同埋好愛我哋每一個學生。
So let's go on to the next slide. Okay. So when I talk about holistically, I always want my kids to get A's. I always tell them, I want you to do your best. I want you to get A's. But that's not the only thing we want for you.
咁講到全人嘅教育咧，咁咧我哋最重要，我哋都係叫啲細路咧，一定要攞 A， 一定要攞滿分但係唔係一直係呢一樣。
So we have a picture of a tree. That's what we use at UCA. We want them to grow up to be a strong tree.
咁咧，我哋嘅呢個嘅意象咧，就係咧，我哋希望每一個學生好似一棵好巨大嘅樹一樣。
So there's 5 areas of development that's important to their growth.
咁咧喺呢個嘅成長裏面咧，有5方面嘅需要留意。
And you can see it's the physical, the cognitive, the social, spiritual, and emotional.
咁所以身體上面要成長啦，理性啦，社交啦。靈性上面同埋佢嘅情緒。
So I think we need to be mindful as parents that as much as we want them to do well in school, we want them to get into a good school, they are not only a brain. They're a body, they're a person, they have a spirit.
咁所以你要知道咧，作為父母咧，你睇你嘅細路嘅時候咧，你唔係淨係咧要佢攞高分啊，因為佢唔係淨係得個頭腦嘅啫，因為佢哋嘅身心同埋靈一齊。
So although this information I'm going to share is important, I want you to understand as parents, if your child doesn't get into a certain school, it's still okay.
咁所以等間我哋俾一啲學校升學嘅資訊俾你咧，你要知道咧，雖然你個學生未必一定去到一個你即係理想嘅學校咧，佢哋咧本身佢哋成長咧係 OK。
Okay, next slide. So when we talk about holistic education, we keep in mind how God has made all of us.
所以全人教育咧，我哋明白咧，上帝點解會創造我哋先。
So in Matthew 22:37 to 38, Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment."
咁啊，翻譯出嚟咧，就耶穌咧喺馬太福音新約裏面一本書講咧，佢話你哋需要咧去愛主你嘅神，並且要盡心盡性盡意嘅嚟到愛主你神。
So the implication of this is that we are more than just our mind.
咁個含義好清楚，我哋一定唔係咧，淨係得個頭腦嘅。
We have a heart.
我哋有心啦。
We have a soul.
我哋有個靈魂。
Okay. And oftentimes we neglect the development of those other areas.
咁好多時咧，我哋就忽略咗咧其他方面嘅成長。
Okay, so at UCA, and what you're going to hear about is we're focusing a lot on the cognitive. I do not want you to forget your child is a whole person.
雖然咧喺 UCA 咧，我哋成日幫佢哋補習啊，我哋注重佢嘅學術上面嘅成長，但係我哋永遠都記得咧，佢哋一個咧係整個嘅人發展。
So as parents, we do a really good job, I think, of physical growth, making sure they're eating, they're healthy, getting their shots, getting their doctor's appointments.
咁所以我哋作為父母嘅，我哋好注重佢哋身體上面成長啦，佢哋有病打針啊，佢哋需要打針或者我哋要俾飽飯佢食啦。
But social growth is something you really have to be intentional about.
但係社交上面嘅成長咧，你一定需要刻意嘅嚟到培養。
This is how children interact with other people.
咁呢個咧就係講到咧，你嘅學生、你嘅子女咧點樣同其他人互動
How they communicate.
點樣去溝通
And that has to be taught, it has to be modeled, it has to be emphasized.
你要知道咧，呢樣嘢咧係需要強調，需要去教，並且咧需要去以身作則嘅。
Oftentimes that you see some of my younger children, they'll get frustrated and then their first instinct is to hit or to push.
咁好多學生咧，當佢哋學術上面有困難嘅時候，佢第一個嘅反應咧就係去打人哋或者比較暴力一啲。
And so they need to learn how to express their concerns, their feelings in a constructive way.
咁佢哋要學習咧點樣去有建設性嚟到表達自己裏面嘅感受。
Okay, our spiritual growth.
咁到我哋嘅屬靈嘅成長。
For us who are Christians, we believe that we will live forever with the Lord. So even when my body is gone, my brain and mind is gone, my spirit remains.
嗱，我知道信仰嘅信念咧，我知道咧，我哋咧嘅靈魂咧會繼續永遠嘅嚟到存在嘅，咁所以咧，我哋同上帝嘅關係係最緊要。
And that's why every person has worth.
咁所以咧，每一個人咧生出嚟已經係有價值嘅。
Then there's the emotional growth.
咁當然都有情緒上面嘅成長。
And a lot of this has to do with how a child sees himself or herself.
咁你講到呢方面嘅時候咧，就係你個子女咧點樣睇佢自己
Who am I? What am I good at? How do I feel about
到
myself?
底我自己係點咧？我對自己嘅感受係點咧？我有啲乜嘢係優點咧？
Oftentimes, children don't know how to answer those questions, and you really face it more when they become young teens.
咁所以咧，一啲子女咧細個嘅時候唔識答呢啲嘅問題嘅時候，到佢咧青年嘅時候咧就會遇見好多困難。
And then there's the cognitive growth.
咁另外咧就係理性上面嘅。
Many of us as parents, what we focus on is their cognitive growth, which is primarily in education.
做家長嘅好多時咧，我只會留意呢一方面嘅，就係佢攞唔攞到 A 成績係點。
So even though we're going to be talking mostly about education today, I want us to remember that your child is a whole person and that when we're talking about their development, there's all those areas of their
咁所以
development.
咧，請你都留意大家講出嘅資訊咧，升學嘅資訊或者學術上面嘅資訊咧，冇錯，我哋係強調呢一樣嘢啊，但係咧你需要一定緊嘅就係咧整個嘅人嘅發展。
Okay, so let's go on to the building blocks of school education. So I will also want us to keep in mind it's a long view of education. There are several stages.
所以就算你講到教育嘅時候咧，都需要知道咧係一個好長嘅唔同階段嘅過程嚟嘅。
So there's the preschool.
咁所以咧有學前班。
Then there's the elementary grade.
咁就小學啦。
High school, which is the most stressful here in Chicago.
咁喺芝加哥係最辛苦嘅時候。
And then there's college and post-college.
然之後咧有大學研究院等等。
And I do believe that it is a building block. That foundation needs to be strong.
咁呢一個咧係一個建築上面嘅唔同嘅需要嘅元素嚟嘅。
So if you want your child to get into a good high school, you don't start building that foundation when they're 6th grade.
咁所以咧，你嘅子女入到個好嘅高中咧，你唔會咧6年班先開始準備佢。
It does start when they're young.
咁所以咧，佢最後生嘅時候，年青嘅時候準備。
I personally am a supporter of preschool for our children.
咁我支持咧呢個學前班嘅。
I think that's where they first begin to learn to develop social skills.
因為學前班咧就幫佢哋開始嚟到學習社交上面嘅成長。
Okay. Now I'm going to talk about elementary education. It's a lot of information. You can get it all online. Like the CPS school guide is like 150 pages.
咁我哋會睇一啲公立學校嘅一啲嘅資訊啦，咁知道啲上網可以睇到啦。咁但係好多資訊有100幾10頁咁。
So I'm just trying to highlight some of the main points today.
咁我哋只係強調某一啲重點啫。
And there'll be questions at the end there'll be questions.
咁最後呢個 workshop 最後咧，我哋有啲問答。
And then I will be available for specific
咁我哋
questions.
都會留低嚟到答啲問題。
So just know it's a lot of information.
咁所以你知道有好多資訊。
So I'm going to start with elementary first.
咁我哋首先由小學開始。
So there's 2 categories of elementary schools.
咁喺芝加哥咧有2種嘅公立嘅小學。
I think I'm a little bit mixed
By the
up.
way, we will make the PowerPoint slides available for you at the end. All right. So you don't have to be taking pictures.
Okay. So there's the neighborhood school.
咁所以有社區嘅學校。
And then there's choice schools.
咁有一啲所謂 choice school， 即係優先揀選。
And you can select up to 20 of those.
咁你申請嘅時候咧，可以揀最多20間。
And then there is selective enrollment
咁
schools.
亦都有所謂選拔嘅學校。
Those are the most competitive to get
咁呢個係
into.
最大競爭㗎啦，入呢啲。
Then there are charter schools.
咁然之後咧，亦都有所謂特許嘅學校。
I didn't put down private schools. There are definitely that option.
咁我哋就冇放私立嘅學校啦，但係呢個絕對係其中一個選項。
Okay, so we're going to talk about the choice schools. So these are what they call the magnet cluster schools.
咁呢啲就係所謂優質嘅小學啦。咁佢哋就會叫做 magnet 或者 magnet cluster。
So they're typically focused on a certain area, like you'll see with some of the schools I listed, technology, world language. You have like a particular specialty.
咁所以咧，佢哋咧會強調某一啲嘅學科嘅，譬如係科技啦，或者世界語言啦等等。
And those seats are filled by lottery.
咁咧佢咧就係抽籤方式入嘅。
So it has nothing to do with your child's academics.
咁所以咧，你啲學生嘅成績咧係冇關係嘅。
Okay, and you can select up to 20 of them.
咁你申請嘅時候咧，可以咧揀最多20間。
So the enrollment period is going on right now for these choice elementary schools, and you can enroll now up until December the 6th.
咁而家咧呢個嘅申請嘅過程已經開始咗啦，咁直至到咧今年嘅12月6號。
And in this case, you can put the schools in any order. It doesn't matter, not like high school.
咁所以20間咧，你可以放任何嘅次序都得。
And you can receive several offers.
咁亦都咧會收到呢個結果嘅時候咧，可能有幾個選項你可以揀去唔同學校。
And they do use the lottery system, so there's nothing you can do to influence the offers that you get.
咁所以咧係用抽籤嘅方式出嚟。
And if you don't get an offer, you will be waitlisted, so you could get an offer later.
咁如果抽唔到你咧，可能咧你會喺個等候嘅列表上邊嚇。
So if you were to register for an elementary school right now, one of these choice schools.
咁所以如果你申請緊小學嘅話，咁你就會考慮下有冇一啲咁嘅所謂 choice school 優質嘅學校。
You will be notified in April of 2020.
咁所以咧，2020年出年嘅時候，4月嘅時候咧就會有結果。
You could get 0 offers, or you could get 1, 2, 3. It really does depends on the way the lottery is done.
咁所以咧喺個抽籤嘅過程度咧係點咧？咁咧可能咧會收到結果係0間係選項或者1、2、3。
So I listed some schools that are common to this area in Bridgeport,
咁
Chinatown.
呢度列出嘅幾間嘅學校咧，就係喺華埠區啦，同埋喺橋港區比較所謂受歡迎嘅。
Just to give you an idea how it works.
咁你就俾少少意見你大家知道下呢啲嘅學校咧點樣去運作。
So Haines School, for example, is a neighborhood school. So if you live within a certain boundary, you can automatically enroll into that school.
Haines School 咧就係 neighborhood school， 即係地區嘅學校啦。所以你如果住近佢嗰個校區嘅話，你就自動會入去呢個學校。
But you also can apply through the magnet cluster.
咁你都可以，但係咧你都可以咧申請入去 Haines School 裏邊嗰個 magnet 嘅課程。
So that's where you would do the application online, and that's where the lottery would happen.
咁咧呢個咧就係你上網可以做嗰個申請啦。咁咧就係正如所講抽籤決定。
So look at it as this is 2 ways you can get into John C. Haines.
咁所以咧有2個方法咧入去 Haines School 嘅。
Neighborhood or lottery.
地區啦，或者咧抽籤入去。
So that's the same for James Ward and Robert Healy.
咁James Ward 同埋 Healy 咧都係一樣。
Now Healy is a little bit unique in that they have their own gifted program.
咁Healy 咧有少少特別嘅，因為佢哋自己有佢嗰個嘅即係優劣嘅課程。
You do not test to get into the gifted program.
咁咧你唔係考試入去嘅。
Not in that particular gifted program.
唔係入去呢一個優質嘅課程。
So they take all their kindergarten students and then they decide through their own internal method which students can go into their gifted program.
所以咧喺 Healy 咧，佢哋喺佢哋嘅幼稚園嘅畢業嘅學生裏邊，佢哋用佢哋嘅方法嚟到揀選佢哋入去呢個優質嘅。
So you cannot apply for the Healy gifted program.
喺外邊去申請入去。
So if you would like to be considered for the gifted program at Healy, you would want to come in at the kindergarten level.
咁所以如果你要入去 Healy 嘅 gifted program 嘅話咧，你幼稚園嘅時候就入去啦。
Okay, and then Mark Sheridan is actually a magnet school, not a magnet cluster school, and so they're open to anybody to apply again through the lottery.
咁咧 Mark Sheridan 咧就係一個 magnet school 啊，咁所以係開放俾任何人嚟到考入去。
So they're not a neighborhood school where if you live within a certain vicinity, you automatically can enroll.
所以咧就唔係地區嘅學校，唔係轉近啲人嚟到嘅。
But when they do the lottery for the magnet school, they do give preference to the people who live within a certain distance from the school.
咁但係咧，佢抽籤嘅時候咧，佢哋絕對咧會俾一啲優先俾嗰啲住得近嘅學生。
And in the case of Mark Sheridan, if you have a sibling there, they give you priority as
咁如果 Mark
well.
Sheridan 嘅話，佢有兄弟姊妹喺嗰度已經讀緊咧，咁佢個優先次序就會高啲。
Okay, so that's the 4 schools that most of us are familiar with in the Chinatown Bridgeport
咁
area.
喺華學裏面4間嘅 magnet school。
Okay, and then the selective enrollment.
咁而家咧就係呢個所謂選拔嘅小學。
These are the hardest schools to get into.
咁咧呢啲咧就比較難入啲嘅學校。
There are 4 types.
咁有四種。
There are academic centers for grades 7 and 8.
咁咧有一個係俾7、8班嘅叫 academic center。
There's 7 of them in the city of Chicago.
咁咧喺芝加哥市裏面咧有7間咁樣嘅學校。
They are all attached to a high school.
咁咧佢哋咧係黐住一間中學嘅。
So the thought is if you get in at 7th grade, you can continue through high school.
咁所以咧你入到去 academic center 7年班嘅時候咧，你就直接即係一條路讀埋高中。
Some examples of these schools would be Whitney Young, Kenwood, Lane Tech. They all have 7th and 8th grade programs. So both my kids went to Kenwood at 7th grade. They tested and got in. And the benefit of the academic center is it's an accelerated program. So in 8th grade, they started taking high school level classes. So they got credit, high school credit. Okay, so it's a really good program if you want your child to be able to have more space or capacity when they get into high school to take AP classes. And what I'm observing with the students we work with, they might get in at the academic center in 7th grade, but they still test for high school.
So it's
not necessary that you stay in that high school associated with grade 7 and 8. And it's a good program. It definitely is. But there's only 7 of them in the city of Chicago. Okay, then there's classical schools, which is mostly, I think most people are familiar with Skinner West, Skinner North. So those are just more accelerated programs. They cover more material, they go a little faster. Okay. Then there's regional gifted programs. So Keller, Leonard are 2 examples. And they're a little more accelerated than the classical schools. Okay, and then there's gifted programs for English language learners, people whose first language is not English. Okay, so all these schools require testing. So kindergarten and 4th, you don't have to pre-qualify, like you don't have to meet a certain minimum requirement of a test. Like an NWEA. But you will take a test. So it could be a little bit hard if your child is a little bit shy. It could be a little bit hard for them to take the test. So that's something you want to keep in mind. Your child may not be ready. Now, if you're applying for grades 5 to 8, you must meet a minimum eligibility requirement based on the NWEA. And that is a standardized test that the CPS system uses throughout. And then once you meet that minimum eligibility, then you can apply for these schools. So, but it will vary depending on what school you apply to, what that minimum requirement would be. Okay, Okay, so I think I talked about the number of schools we have. There are not a lot of these schools in this city, so that's why it's very competitive and they do take tests.
咁所以咧，芝加哥裏面唔係好多呢啲咁嘅學校咧，所以就需要考入去啊，所以嗰個競爭就會比較大啲。
And so you will have to apply and you will be scheduled a time and date for the
咁所以咧，
test.
你需要先申請，然之後咧約一個時間就考入去。
And if you apply for a classical school, it's a different test than if you apply for the academic center.
咁如果你去考 classical school 或者你考 academic center 嘅話咧，嗰個試咧係有啲唔同。
So your child could take 2 tests.
咁所以咧，你個學生咧可以考2個試。
And there's a list of all those schools available on the CPS website.
咁咧公立學校嗰個嘅網頁咧就列出咗呢種嘅學校。
Okay, the next slide is the charter school.
特許學校。
I'm not familiar with the charter schools at the elementary level, but they are approved by CPS. They're funded by taxpayer money.
咁呢個特許學校咧亦都有小學嘅系統嘅，咁我哋唔多熟，但係咧肯定咧佢哋都係用即係政府嘅稅亦都係俾呢個公立學校去認可嘅。
But they're operated independently.
但係咧佢哋嘅行政咧，佢哋嘅運作咧係獨立嘅。
There's typically an organization that manages that school.
咁所以咧佢哋有另外一個特許學校嘅組織嚟到去運作呢啲學校。
They tend to be smaller in class sizes.
咁佢哋嘅班咧係比較細啲。
So it could be a good option.
咁所以你可能係一個好嘅選項。
And you would need to apply directly to those schools.
咁你就需要直接申請考入去呢啲學校。
They are also based on lottery.
咁你亦都係抽籤方法。
So you don't have to worry about a particular test result.
咁所以咧唔係你嘅成績又幾好。
Okay. Any questions so far about these types of elementary schools?
咁我想問下中間有冇問題啊？唔同嘅種類嘅學校有冇呢啲咁嘅問題
Okay. So we're going to go into finding a good fit for your child. It's a lot of information, I know.
咁我知道有好多資訊啦，咁但係我哋知道咧，你個細路咧到底點樣揾到適合佢嘅學校
But as a parent, I think we need to keep in mind our child.
但作為父母咧，我哋留意佢
So holistically.
就係咧要整全嘅留意。
So before you consider what could be a good school,
咁你諗下乜嘢係好嘅學校之前咧？
understand your child's personality, their strengths, their weaknesses.
首先咧要認識下你嘅細路仔咧佢嘅強弱優點係點。
And as I mentioned earlier, with those younger grades, to have them take a test when they're young could be very hard.
咁正如我所講啦，佢哋好細個，如果走去考試嘅話咧，可能係非常之艱難。
They will sense pressure.
咁佢哋有壓力咯。
They may feel stressed by being in a test environment.
咁佢喺一個考試嘅場地。
So you need to take that into consideration. Okay, you need to understand how your child learns best.
咁你要知道咧，你個學生咧到底點樣喺最好嘅環境方法嚟到學習。
I have a son who is very physical and he learns better by doing things.
咁佢有仔咧，佢係好中意用行動、動作去學嘢。
Very active.
咁非常之活躍。
And I have one that can sit there and quiet and really focus on the math problem.
另外一個咧真係好安靜嘅，佢可以好專心去做一個嘅數學題。
So you have to understand how your child works, how he learns. 咁所以你要知道你學生嘅學習嘅方式係點。 Now, the social needs of your child,
咁咧你個社交上面嘅成長
I think is just so important.
咁呢個係非常之重要。
I think you need to understand what your child needs to help them to develop socially.
咁你需要認識你自己嘅學生，都明白嗰個細路咧點樣社交上面成長。
So for my children, they went to a Christian private school until 5th or 6th grade.
咁我嘅細路佢哋兩個咧由細到大就去到5至6班都係讀基督教嘅小學。
And I think that smaller class environment,
咁咧因為個班比較細
the relationship with the teacher
咁同嗰個老師嘅關係
was very positive
咁
for
係非
them.
常之正面嘅。
So they could develop their social skills,
咁發展咗佢自己社交嘅能力
make friends.
咁可以學識朋友。
They did not have to worry about any bullying.
咁唔需要驚俾人哋蝦。
And I think it just provided a good, stable
咁
foundation
所以就俾咗一個好
for
安
them.
定嘅環境俾佢成長。
Some of these schools, the class sizes are big.
咁所以有啲嘅學校咧，佢哋嘅班房係好大嘅。
So I look at my students that I have in my after-school program.
咁我哋嗰個課後班裏面睇見嗰啲學生。
Some of these young kids are coming from schools where there's 30, 35 students.
咁佢哋啲學生咧，佢哋嘅班嘅人數咧係30、40以上嘅人。
And one teacher.
咁啊，只係得一個老師。
So if your child is quiet,
咁如果你個細路係靜嘅話，
it's really hard for your child to build a relationship with the teacher.
咁佢要去同個老師建立關係就好艱難。
And it's hard for the teacher to really get to know your
亦都係好
child.
難咧，讓嗰個老師去認識你嘅細路。
So, and it's not a reflection on the teacher's ability.
咁唔係因為嗰個老師渣同埋堅料嘛。
You just think about it. If you're one person with 35-year-old, 6-year-old kids, how do you manage that?
咁所以咧，你諗下一個老師要去到管理30至40個學生，
It's very
邊同教都好難。
It's very hard.
所以非常之難。
So that's why I feel the foundation, those early years of schooling, has to be as strong as you can get it.
咁所以咧，你最初期嘅細路仔嘅學習嘅過
So
程，
keep that in mind with the social needs of your
都係
child.
打好個基礎，特別係社交上面。
What's going to help them develop a sense of confidence,
點樣可以幫佢有自信，
safety,
等佢感到有安全，
where they can make friends
等佢能夠識到朋友，
easily, use their communication
識
skills.
得去點樣去溝通。
Okay. The other thing you want to think about is the logistics,
咁另外咧就係諗到車接送方面啦。
because everyone's working. Everyone has to figure out how to drop off their child, pick up their child.
咁因為個個都係做緊嘢嚇，你點接送咧？
And every school, when they dismiss in CPS, it's crazy around the
咁你
neighborhood.
知道公立學校一放學嘅
Cars
時候咧，
parked, double parked.
啲車係亂咁跑。
So you have to think about that.
咁所以一定需要考慮。
Who's going to pick up your child at the end of the day?
因為你最尾嘅時候一定要接放學嘛。
And then some schools offer after-school care. A lot of them do not.
咁有好多嘅學校咧有課後嘅補習可以留低，但係有好多人冇。
But if you need after-school care,
但係如果你需要課後
you need to
照顧，
factor that into the
咁
school
你
choice
就
that
需
you
要考
make.
慮多一個因素。
So for me, with my kids, I picked up, and they were at some point 2 different schools. So I literally, my afternoon was spent running around picking up my child.
咁佢兩個細路成長嘅時候，就需要放嘅時候，周圍揸車去接佢哋。
It was stressful
咁非常之大壓力。
for me. Okay, and then think about your child's priorities
咁你諗下你個，再諗下你個細路仔
In
一個
terms-
優先次序，
in terms of their growth
特別佢嘅
and
成
their
長，佢
development.
點發展？
So we talked about their social needs, but the emotional needs, the physical needs, the spiritual needs, all of that should be something you want to think about.
咁所以咧諗下佢哋嘅屬靈上面成長、社交上面成長啊，等等唔同各方面。
And then after all that, then you can start researching potential
然
schools.
之後考慮晒所有呢啲因素之後咧，你就可以咧研究一下有啲乜嘢有資格會入到嘅學校咧。
And you can find all this information online.
咁你網上面可以揾到所有學校嘅資料嘅。
You could look up each school's academic performance,
咁每間學校佢嘅成績嘅優劣啦，
their demographics,
佢嘅學生嘅分佈，
which is the makeup of how many are maybe Asian, Latino, Black, if that
幾
matters.
多係墨西哥人等等。
School hours that they are open,
咁佢哋學校開放嘅時間，
and then size of school.
同埋咧學校大細。
So, but I think you want to get to know, be clear on what your child needs first
咁所以咧，你一定要先考慮到咧你嘅細路係需要啲乜嘢，
before you consider the schools.
然之後先至去考慮咧佢入邊間學校。
And please do not go by what other people tell you.
咁所以咧，千祈唔好咧，阿豬阿狗叫你去嗰間就去。
Because what works for one student may not work for your
因為
student.
合嗰個學生嘅話，唔一定係合你嗰個學生。
It's very important you as a parent know your
係
child
一個必須要留意嘅嘢嚟，因為你需要認識你自己嘅孩
and
子
what he or she needs to grow in a healthy way.
你嘅子女點樣可以喺健康嘅方法
And
環
it
境底下成
is
長？
not just how smart they are.
唔係咧話佢入到啲咩名校。
Okay, so next one. So along those lines, I want us to understand there's a big picture of education.
咁所以咧，你需要明白咧喺教育上面咧係一個大嘅圖畫嚟。
And the question that we all have to ask ourselves
咁
as
所以咧，
parents
每個人咧都需要問自己呢個問題。
is what is your long-term vision for your child?
到底你嗰個嘅遠景啊，對你個子女嘅成長嘅遠景
What kind of person do you want him or her to become?
你想佢成為一個點樣嘅人？
How can you support that as the parent?
你點樣作為一個父母去支持佢成為呢一種嘅人？
So recently with my oldest, he's 19.
咁啊，佢嘅老大咧而家19歲啦。
He's always been a good
咁
student.
啊，佢咧由細到大，小學、中學都係一個好學生。
Scored something like 97, 98 percentile on the SAT.
佢嘅 SAT 咧百分比咧係98。
First time.
一考就考到。
I did not think he would have problems transitioning to college.
咁佢去大學咧，我冇諗過佢會有問題。
I think my younger one will have problems going to college. But I did not think my older one.
但係我冇諗過老大會有問題。
He got into one of the best engineering programs in the Midwest. I knew it was going to be hard. But it was really hard. He ended up not doing as well. And it was very hard for me to accept that. Typical Asian parents, right? And I felt very, very hurt and sad for him. But God helped me to see and reminded me that my prayer for my son, actually both sons, has always been that I wanted him to grow up loving the Lord with all his mind, heart, and soul. My vision for him was not that he be a great engineer. Of course, I want that. I want him to have a good job. I want him eventually to be a father. I want him eventually to raise my grandkids. But that is short-sighted. And the Lord very graciously reminded me this summer there's a bigger vision. And it is what kind of person is he becoming? He is a Christian. And what I saw this year of struggle and failure is that he continued to stay strong in his faith. And I praise God for that. So if it took a failure to strengthen his faith, his spiritual person, that is what I'm thankful for. So keep that in mind. Okay, you need to have a clarity in your mind as to what kind of person you want your child to become. Okay? And how do you support that? Okay, you're not in control of your child when they become older, trust me. But you can encourage. You can mentor. And you can be a model. So my son has seen me with UCA since I started. And he has helped me every year. And he knows from how I've chosen to live my life that I'm here to serve the Lord. So I'm praying that he will see that, continue to see that. Okay. But I think parents need to be the best example you can be for your child. Okay. So keep in mind too that the big picture of education has to do with these skills. And I just got something from the internet. There's a lot of information. You don't see anything about all A's or high SAT score on that. Okay. But it's the ability to think critically, problem solve. Actually, ability to work with people, collaborate, adapt. When there's changes, to be flexible, take the initiative. Right. If I don't know what I'm doing, I need to ask. And then you see communication skills, both orally and written skills. And then because we're living in a time of information age, way more information than any of our brains can take in.
因為咧，我哋個腦咧冇可能會吸收嘅所有嘅資訊。
You need to be able to analyze the data,
你就要識得去分析，
make sense of the information.
然之後知道呢啲資料點樣去處理。
And then lastly, be curious about learning.
咁所以另外最後一樣咧，就係對於學習對於個教育咧係有好奇心。
So you can see these are all what I call soft skills.
咁呢啲咧就係所謂軟嘅技巧。
These are not skills you necessarily develop in school.
咁呢啲咧唔一定喺你嘅學校裏面能夠培養到出嚟嘅技巧。
School can have an influence.
咁所以學校可以影響佢。
But you as the parent need to be intentional by putting them in environments that will help develop these.
咁所以你作為父母嘅話咧，你就需要咧 make sure 你個子女咧喺一個好嘅環境裏面嚟到去發展呢啲軟嘅技能。
So no matter what school they end up going to,
咁無論去到邊間學校，
they can still develop these skills.
佢哋都需要嚟到去發展呢啲嘅技能。
Okay? And these are very important as they get into adulthood.
咁特別咧，佢哋進入成人階段嘅時候，呢啲都係好重要。
A lot of my students in the after-school program,
咁我哋有好多學生咧喺個課後補習，
they struggle with all these
佢哋
skills
咧成日都去掙扎呢啲咁樣嘅技能。
because they're in homes where the parents are working all the time.
咁因為佢哋留屋企，父母成日做嘢，
They might be an only child.
佢哋淨係一個細路屋企。
And so then when they're at home, they're on the computer or the internet.
咁所以咧，一喺屋企咧，佢哋就上電腦。
And those spending as much time on the internet, they do not build those kind of
咁所以
soft
咧，成日上
skills.
網嘅話，佢冇可能咧會發展到呢啲軟嘅技能。
So as a parent, you have to get your child out of the house
咁所以咧，你作為父母咧，一定要捉你嘅子女唔好咁窄啦。
and be mindful what environment you put them in.
你俾佢一個好嘅開放嘅環境成長。
Okay, so that leads into how do I help my child?
咁所以咧呢個咧就點樣去幫助我嘅子女？
So the biggest thing I would recommend as someone who works with kids, I mean, I have like 90 kids in our after-school program. In 5 or 6 years, I've probably seen several hundred kids.
咁所以咧，我哋個課後補習而家有90至100個細路，所以過去6年裏面咧，我哋見到幾百個學生。
It is always your relationship with your
咁
child.
第一樣嘢行先嘅，一定係你作為父母點樣同子女建立關係。
You need to spend time with your child.
呢個係必須要嘅，一定需要花時間喺佢身上。
Okay? You need to build a relationship
你
with
一定要
your
建立
child.
關係。
And even when they don't want to,
就算佢唔想，
you still do it.
你都仍然要堅持佢。
So going back to my oldest son,
咁翻去老大啦。
he had a hard time sharing with me what happened in college.
咁過去1年佢哋有好多嘅困難嘅時間，佢唔敢去講出嚟。
He did
咁但係佢終於有講，
because he knows I love him.
因為佢知道咧我愛佢。
And he spent a lot of time with me this summer talking about what he did wrong,
咁過去個暑假有俾同學講咧，就話俾我聽佢到底做錯啲乜嘢，
what he could learn from it.
或者佢有啲咩應該會學會咧。
And we had a lot of great
咁
conversations.
所以咧有好多好有意思嘅對話。
So you want to have a kind of relationship where your child can come to you.
所以你需要有一個正面嘅關係咧，以至佢有問題嘅時候，子女會自動會揾你，
They can talk to you
佢會同你講嘢，
and you will listen.
而且咧你會聆聽。
Okay? They have to have that safe environment in their relationship with you.
佢一定咧要同你嘅關係咧，就有一個咁安全嘅環
If
境。
they do not have it,
如果冇咧，
they will look to their friends
咁佢一定會揾個朋友啦，
or the internet.
或者上網。
And trust me, that is not a source of wisdom.
咁大家知道嗰度一定唔係揾到智慧。
Okay, so I really encourage all parents that no matter what stage of life,
所以無論咧你子女係邊一個階段咧，我
to make sure you spend time with your
一
child.
定要花多啲時間喺你子女身上。
Okay, I think we're so busy
我知道我哋好忙，
that we just don't realize that that we're not giving our children attention,
咁我哋知道咧，我哋好少會俾注意力俾我哋細路，
and they know it.
但係佢哋亦都知道，
They will pick up on it.
佢哋會明白。
Okay, the other thing is to encourage a love for learning and a willingness to learn from failures and mistakes.
咁所以咧，另外一樣咧就係咧去到鼓勵佢咧喺成與敗佢錯處裏面咧有一個意志嚟到去成長。
So when they do make a mistake,
所以如果佢哋犯錯，
don't yell at them.
你第一個反而唔好鬧佢哋，
Don't tell them they're stupid,
唔好話你，
okay?
唔好
Or
話犯錯，
compare them with another
都
child,
唔好比較其他人，
okay? You learn a lot from failures.
因為你喺嗰個挫敗 塊裏面可以學到好多人生功課。
So with my oldest son,
嗱，老大啦，講翻。
he is doing very well the second year.
咁啊，第二年咧就做得好好啦。
He is learning how to learn.
咁佢學習，因為學習點樣去學習。
He is learning what he needs so he can be a better student.
佢要明白咧，佢要成為一個更好嘅學生咧，佢需要有啲咩技能。
And he is free to talk to me.
咁啊，佢好自由嘅會嚟同我講。
So that I think is a good thing.
咁所以呢個係一個非常之好嘅現象。
I'd rather him learn it now than 5 years from now.
咁我梗係想而家佢學到呢啲咁嘅技能啦，好過5年之後先至學。
Where I can still be here to help.
因為而家我仍然可以喺佢身邊幫佢。
Mentor him.
去做教練。
And he knows I've failed many times, so we had a lot to talk about.
咁個老大都知道佢失敗過好多次，所以有好多對話。
The other thing is to promote positive social skills.
所以咧，另外咧一樣咧就係要去學習一啲正面嘅情緒管理同埋社交嘅技能。
Kids develop that in social environments.
咁你個學生咧點樣去喺呢方面成長咧？一定要喺一個社交環境裏面成長。
So if your child is mostly at home when they're not at school,
所以如果佢唔返學嘅話，你嘅子女淨係留屋企。
I would encourage them to come to church.
咁我會鼓勵佢去教會。
To youth group.
去青年嘅團體。
Where they can be with others.
佢就可以認識到其他人。
And have people who are a little bit older mentor them.
有啲叫大啲嘅哥哥姐姐可以做佢教練。
I also encourage that at dinner time.
咁所以亦都鼓勵我哋食飯嘅時候。
That you are talking with your child.
咁啊喺晚飯嘅時候同我哋傾偈。
Okay, and ask them how their day was going.
問下佢哋，喂，你今日發生咩事啊？
And typically we ask what was the highlight of the day.
咁我哋好多時晚飯嘅時候就會問。
What was the low point of the day?
今日整日裏面有啲咩 high 有咩 low？
So we use our dinner time to talk. Sometimes it's so loud, my husband and I can't even talk because my sons are talking so loud.
咁所以咧，我哋一食晚飯嘅時候就好多偈傾㗎啦，特別咧佢哋。
But it's a good time and there's no electronic at the table. We're talking. Okay, and I want to hear what's going on in their heart. Okay, also promote self-discipline. Now, parents, please assign some responsibilities at home to your child. I know a lot of times as parents, because we love them, we do everything for them. But it doesn't help them in the long run. Okay, so if they can help you do some chores like sweep the floor, let them do it. But don't criticize them after they do it. Just know that it's not going to get done well, but it's the idea that they're helping. And they're learning they're part of a family. And they have to contribute to the family. It's very important that children learn how to use a calendar or an agenda. A lot of the schools give an agenda. They should use it to write down their homework. Okay, and you would think that would be obvious, but so many of my kids after school don't write their homework down. So they forget their homework. So that's part of the discipline. Always finish homework. So with my kids after school, if they don't do their homework, they forget something, I still make them do it the next day. So even if it's turned in late to a teacher and they get no points, they still need to do it. Because they're wanting to teach discipline. Okay, volunteer. I think it's good for kids to volunteer and help other kids. So community service. Okay. Physical exercise. Especially boys. Get them involved with some sports. Okay. And then physical rest. You will find as they get into teenage years, they get less and less sleep. They stay up late, doing homework, on the internet, and that's not good for their concentration. Okay. And then it's very important that no matter the age of your child,
咁所以咧無論你嘅子女係乜嘢歲數，
that you are involved in their education
你一定要咧主動嘅參與喺佢嘅過程，
and their personal growth.
同埋咧佢自己個人嘅發展。
I think our children need us for a long
因
time.
為咧我哋嘅子女咧需要我哋家長好多
So
時間。
even though my sons are 6 feet,
咁佢老大係6尺高啊，
they still need me to guide them.
佢仍然需要我咧嚟到做佢教練。
They still need to know that I care about what's going on in their
佢
life.
哋要知道咧父母好緊張佢發生咩事。
So you as parents do not think that because they get older, they're teenagers or high school, you don't need to be as
咁所以咧
involved.
唔好諗住你子女我去到青少年嘅時候咧我就唔使參與。
That is not true.
咁啊絕對唔會發生。
They still need you,
佢仍然需要你，
though they may not think they need
但佢
you.
哋可能未必覺得佢需要你。
Okay? So you do not give up.
所以咧你唔好咧同埋放棄。
So it will take a lot of effort on your part
咁所以咧你需要加好多力落去。
because many times we're tired from
咁
working.
因為我哋做完工翻到去我哋會攰嘛。
But these kids that you have
呢啲你有
are a
嘅子
gift
女
from God,
係上帝俾你嘅禮物嚟，
and they are a very special gift.
同埋咧佢哋非常之特別嘅。
So we need to make time for them.
所以一定咧係需要花時間俾佢哋。
Okay. So that has to be a conscious decision.
咁所以咧一定係刻意咁樣去做。
Okay, then I'm going to go in briefly into preschool and
好，
kindergarten.
而家我哋介紹下學
It's so complicated,
咁
so
係可能係好
I
複
can
雜。
answer questions afterwards.
咁所以完咗之後可以有問題去解答。
So for the most part, CPS only offers 3 magnet schools through a computerized lottery.
咁咧，芝加哥嘅公立學校裏邊咧，只係提供3個嘅magnet school。
And they're not in the area here.
咁咧係抽籤入去嘅，但係咧就唔喺呢一個嘅區域裏邊。
And the key thing with this preschool
咁咧最主要重點係乜咧？
is that if you get in at the preschool for these 3 schools, you automatically continue on through the elementary
咁咧就
school.
學前班佢入到去呢啲嘅學校嘅話咧，佢哋一條路會上去。
Most of the preschools available in Chicago are through a different organization called the City of Chicago Early Learning.
咁咧，所以呢啲嘅學前嘅學校咧，好多時咧都係由呢個 City of Chicago 早期學教育去到管理嘅。
So they must be 3 or 4 years old by September 1st.
咁咧，所以個要求咧就係9月1號之前咧，一定要3或者4歲。
Okay. So, and you can locate schools by zip code,
咁你用你嘅 zip code 咧揾呢啲嘅學校，
and you can apply
咁
online,
你可以上網申請咯。
and then you can select 2 schools.
咁你可以最多揀2間。
And then you wait
咁你
for them to give you an offer.
咁
And if
佢抽到籤之後，
they don't give you an offer, then you're on the wait list.
咁如果你未收到結果咧，你可能就喺等候嘅列表上。
So there are some schools in the area that offer preschool.
咁喺呢個嘅地區裏邊咧，有一啲嘅學校咧都會有學前班。
These are typically, you don't pay tuition,
咁呢啲咧學費係免，
but there's limited seats.
但係咧空位有限。
Now, the current mayor of Chicago
咁我哋而家芝加哥嘅市長，
did spend more money
咁好似花咗多啲錢，
recently to encourage more parents to have their kids go to
咁
preschool.
咧就去鼓勵啲家長去俾嗰啲子女去學前班。
And the current mayor of Chicago
咁而家我哋嗰個嘅市長
has plans
有啲嘅計劃，
to make universal 4-year-old program available.
咁咧就想實行一個普遍嘅4年嘅學前班。
I don't know when that will be available, but that is the direction. So basically, if your child's going to be 4 years old by September 1st of that school year,
咁譬如佢喺開學之前，佢係4歲嘅話，
you'll have a higher chance to get your child into a tuition-free preschool.
咁你就可以去到一個咧學費全免嘅學前班，機會率大啲。
Okay. Now there is, besides the schools, James Ward, National Teacher Academy, John C. Haynes, they offer full-day preschool. There's also community-based organizations that offer preschool.
咁呢啲學前班咧有James Ward 啦、NTA 啦同埋 Haynes 呢啲係全日嘅學前班嚟嘅，咁亦都有其他社群自己發起嘅學前班。
So the Chinese American Service League has a Head Start program.
咁譬如嗰個 Castle 嗰個華人諮詢處就有個叫 Head Start program。
So these are tuition free, but there are limited seats.
咁免學費但係咧個位咧係有限。
So it's not a guarantee you will get your child into one of those.
所以咧唔一定保證你入到去。
Okay. Then there are private
當然都有
preschools.
私立嘅學前班。
So you would pay for those.
咁你就要俾學費。
Okay. So this is primarily the options for your child if your child's going to be 3 or 4 years old by
咁如果你
September.
子女9月前係3或者4歲嘅話咧，有啲咁樣嘅選擇。
So for example, if your child's going to be 3 by September 1st, 2020,
咁如果你2020年9月1號之前你個細路咧係3歲嘅話，
you should be applying now.
咁咧你就需要而家申請啦。
Okay. So, and then there's one more I forgot to put up there on the preschool, but there is tuition-based preschool
都
offered
有啲收學費嘅學前班。
by Chicago Public School.
咁咧就係由公立學校提供。
And you will have to contact Chicago Public School for information on that.
咁咧就需要自己去查詢啦。
But those are typically pretty expensive.
咁咧呢啲通常都比較貴。
Okay. And then lastly, kindergarten.
咁最後就係幼稚園。
So your child must be 5 years old or 5 years old on or before September 1st.
咁你9月1號之前咧，你個細路咧係5
To apply for 2020-2021 school year.
如果你學年係20至到21年嘅話咧，就要9月1號之前。
So the only thing is the age requirement.
咁所以咧有呢個年紀嘅條件。
And so you would apply for choice or selective enrollment elementary schools that we talked about earlier.
咁你就可以申請入去頭先我所講嘅 choice school 或者selective enrollment。
Or if you live in the neighborhood of like Healy, then you automatically would go to Healy because that's your neighborhood
當然都
school.
有一啲 neighborhood school 地區嘅學校，如果住喺附近嘅話，你自然就會入去。
Okay. But there is now an exception
咁就而家咧有一個嘅例外。
for the kindergarten age requirement.
咁咧就特別入去幼稚園嘅年歲限制。
And CPS allows for certain exceptions. Your child can go into kindergarten before, even though they're not 5 years old, as long as they become 5 years old between September 2nd and December 31st.
咁個例外咧就係譬如係20年嘅時候9月2號至到10月31號咧，只要你個子女咧會係5歲嘅話就可以入去。
Of 2020.
咁特別係講到
So if you're applying for next year's school year.
咁所以你就係考去下一年嗰個學年。
But they must have attended 1 year of preschool.
但係咧佢一定需要咧去咗一個學前班，起碼1年咁啊。
So that's something that's new now at
咁
CPS.
而家呢個係新嘅例外。
They call that accelerated placement.
咁呢個所謂加速嘅入學。
So if you have a really bright student that you want to get them into kindergarten earlier instead of waiting 1 whole year, this will be the
咁
process.
如果細路係比較醒啲嘅咁你就唔想等佢1年，之後可以咧就先俾佢入去幼稚園。
Okay. So that's the preschool and kindergarten.
咁學前班同埋幼稚園講完啦。
And then some additional information. If your child is not currently a CPS student,
咁如果你個子女而家唔係公立學校嘅學生，
you will need a CPS student ID
咁咧你就需要咧一個嘅CPS 公立學校嘅證件。
to create an account in Go CPS.
咁咧就去上網 Go CPS 呢個地方咧去到 create 一個嘅戶口。
And Go CPS is a system that they use to apply for schools.
咁呢個 Go CPS 咧就係申請學校嘅網頁嚟嘅。
You can do paper copies,
咁你可以用紙申請都得。
but the thing with paper copies
用紙咧，
is you have to make sure they receive the paper
咁你一
copies.
定要 make sure 佢哋收到
So
你。
you either drop it off physically downtown
咁所以你親身去市中心嗰度俾佢，
or you send it through certified mail to make sure they receive it.
或者你俾多少錢即係掛號嘅寄去。
So they encourage online
咁所以咧，
application.
佢哋絕對鼓勵係上網嚟到申請嘅。
Okay. And if you have a student that is applying to grades 5 and 6 and say they've been going to private school up until that point, they will need to take the NWEA test first before they can apply.
咁所以咧，如果你有啲嘅細路咧係要考去唔至9年班嘅話咧，你咧需要 make sure 佢一定要考咗呢個所謂標準試 NWEA。
Yeah, I don't think that applies to anyone here, but just keep in mind that if your child's been going to a private school in those early years, you will have to do some extra
所以咧，佢
things.
0至4歲係去一啲私立學校嘅話咧，佢一定要申請之前，佢一定要咧先考呢個標準試。
Okay. And then the last slide, I think, is the high school application. I'm not going to go through that because that is very complicated.
另外咧，我哋想講少少下高中申請嘅。
But I am available to do another talk, or if you want to talk to
咁
me
因為呢個
about
太複雜
that.
啊，所以唔會講太多。我哋會組織另外一個嘅講座講呢樣。
That is probably the most competitive
咁呢個咧係非常之大競爭嘅
part of the education process in CPS.
咁啊，所以喺呢個公立學校芝加哥嘅系統裏面咧係非常之大競爭。
So the key thing about the high school application you need to know.
咁啊，你個申請高中嘅時候咧，重點喺邊咧？
It is based on the 7th grade grades.
就係咧係申請嘅時候咧係基於你個學生嘅七年級嘅成績。
The final grade.
就係7年級最後嘅成績。
And the last NWEA of the 7th grade.
同埋咧喺7年班考過最後嘅標準試成績。
Those two components is what plays into the high school
呢
application.
兩樣嘢咧就係最決定性佢去邊間高中。
So to be able to get into schools like Walter Payton, Jones, Whitney Young, they're going to have to be doing very well by the end of 7th grade.
等等呢啲咁嘅好嘅高中咧，佢一定要7年班以上做得好好。
So that's the main thing you need to understand about the high school application at
所以咧
this
高中
point.
申請嘅時候咧，需要特別留意呢個方案。
So if you want your child to apply for those high
咁
schools,
如果你想佢考入去啲好嘅高中咧，
you need to be building those foundations one step at a
你
time
而家咧就要每步嘅嚟到去做幫助佢發展。
at those lower grades.
特別咧佢而家係細嘅時候，你一定要幫佢。
Okay. And the high school, unfortunately, the high school application is very stressful.
咁啊，好不幸咧喺呢度咧去考高中咧係非常之大壓力嘅。
And so because of that, one thing we do at UCA
咁喺 UCA 我哋幫佢做乜啊？
is to help our students
就係幫嗰啲學生，
apply and the parents.
幫佢學生，幫佢哋家長咧點樣可以一步一步去申請。
So last year,
舊年啊，
one of our 8th grade students,
咁啊有個8年班嘅學生，
because she was so stressed
因為
about the
壓力
process,
好大啊喺個申請過程裏面。
chose to apply to an easy high school.
咁佢寫個申請表嘅時候，佢先咧揀選項優次咧就易入啲佢先寫，
Because she was afraid she wouldn't get into the better high
因為佢
schools.
怕咧入唔到嗰啲好嘅學校。
And she was in tears.
咁佢所以就喊。
And so we counseled her on what we thought was the right order
咁我哋就話俾佢聽個申請
by
表
which you
咧，
list your high schools.
輔導佢點樣去列出嗰啲嘅學校。
We wanted the easy one to be last
咁我哋將嗰最易入嗰啲放喺最後，
because the CPS goes by order of preference.
因為咧公立學校睇啲申請表嘅時候咧，佢哋由1開始數落去。
And she was a good student,
咁佢係一個好嘅學生啊，
but she did not think
但係
she was a good
但係佢缺
student.
乏自信，佢覺得佢自己唔夠。
See, that's the emotional health.
咁所以咧嗰個就係情緒嘅問題。
So even though we changed the order of preference,
咁我哋幫佢轉
she
嗰個嘅
changed it back
次
again.
序，佢就翻到屋企自己偷雞又轉
And
翻。
and we're meeting with her mom.
咁啊，我哋就同佢媽咪到見面。
Her mother did not agree with her preference
咁啊，個媽咧就唔贊成個女咁樣寫嘅。
and begged us to help.
咁
Begged us to help her daughter change the order.
咁就幫佢個女轉翻個次序。
But when I changed the order, her daughter changed it back.
咁啊，當佢改嘅時候，佢就偷雞又自己又改翻。
So what I did is I waited till after the deadline,
咁所以咧，我哋作為佢嘅 UC student 咧，我哋等佢過咗個截止日期先。
and then I wrote to CPS
咁我就出信去公立學校。
and I asked for a form to reorder the preference.
咁啊特別咧，將佢嘅表格咧嚟到改佢嘅次序。
And we signed their mother's name,
咁啊，母親就簽名。
and then they changed it.
咁啊，公立學校就幫我哋轉翻。
So it was that hard of a process for her because she felt stressed.
所以非常之困難，因為佢個壓力好大。
And she did not want to think she would fail.
咁啊，所以佢好怕失敗。
Though we had confidence in her.
但係咧，我哋對佢有信心喎。
So when she got her offer
咁佢得到結果。
in March, it was actually March of this year,
咁啊3月得到結
she
果。
was so excited she
咁
got
佢就
into
好
Lane
興奮
Tech.
啊！因為
Lane Tech was not her first choice.
咁啊入
We
到
made
去
it her first choice.
佢以為入
She got in and she just cried.
咁但係佢最終入到 Lane Tech。
See, this is how hard this high school process
所以
is.
咧考高中咧好辛苦嘅。
It just makes these teens feel all kinds of emotion.
咁所以呢啲嘅青少年咧諗到好多負面嘅情緒。
And they need people to help them.
咁所以咧需要有人咧喺旁邊。
So by working with her mother, we changed the order.
所以同嗰個媽咪一齊到合作。
and she got into a better school than she would have otherwise.
咁啊，佢自己咁填咧，佢入唔到間好嘅學校。我哋幫佢填嘅時候，佢入間好嘅。
So that's why I'm saying you need to be involved with your
所
children.
以點解你需要參與咧？
Okay, because they really struggle with these decisions that they need to make.
因為咧喺啲咁嘅重大決定裏面，佢哋真係有掙扎。
Okay, so that's just one example of how hard it is for
所以
high
呢個係一
school.
個其中嘅例子，話俾你聽，申請高中有幾大壓力。
But again, keep in mind,
所以咧，你緊記，
if they don't get in the water patent,
佢入唔到 water patent 都好，
it is still okay.
係絕對冇問題。
Okay, they will learn in every environment you put them in if you are there to guide them.
如果你幫佢同佢一齊行嘅話咧，
Okay.
乜嘢環境裏面佢都學習到。
Because you do not want your child to feel
你唔想咧，你個子女感覺啦，
like they are dumb
佢哋咧係
because they didn't get into water patent or Whitney Young.
入唔到
Okay.
入唔到 Whitney Young，佢哋好蠢。
Because how they see themselves is going to affect them for college.
因為咧，佢哋點樣去自我去到認識嘅時候咧，就會影響佢大學嘅過
So
程。
you as parents need to be involved to encourage them.
所以咧，作為父母咧，需要循旁嘅去指導鼓勵。
It's just unfortunate that in Chicago the high school process is very
呢
stressful.
個非常之不幸，因為即係喺芝加哥公立學校嗰個系統係咁複雜。
In some ways, it's more stressful than college.
咁啊，我有啲情況咧，可能係比大學更加複雜。
So I left my in the back. I can go through what we have. Anyway, I have my business card. I have information about UCA. I'm not promoting UCA at
咁啊，
all.
呢度唔係咩買咩廣告啊，不過即係有個聯絡方法俾你。
But I want you to have access to me if you have
但如果
questions.
你有任何問題嘅話咧，可以隨便問。
And so you can send me an email.
咁你可以俾
You can talk to Pastor Mark. I'm happy to come back again
咁你可以話俾我聽。
because my heart is to help parents
咁因為我哋嘅心志咧就係希望能夠服務呢度嘅家長，
because the process is very hard.
因為個過程咧係複雜唔係好困難。
And if your first language is not English,
特別咧，你第一個嘅語言咧唔係
it
英
is
文
very hard
咁咧係好困難。
to read through 150 pages.
因為要讀晒150頁嘅資料
Try to figure out what's the best solution for your
諗
child.
下點樣最好嘅策略幫你個學生。
Okay, so that's all I have. We can open up for Q&A.
咁如果有問題嘅話，可唔可以而家如果你方便嘅話，而家問都得，好嘛？有問題，好 ，M P 可唔可以俾個咪？唔該唔該。中文又可以問。
Thank you first。
開咗啦。
開咗中文啦。我想問一下咧，我上網 CS 嗰網咧，有啲學校分類有分 A、B、C 之間 level 嘅，我想知道佢哋係點評價標準。
A、B、C、D。
係啊，有啲分類啲 level 之間 level，我唔知佢哋今日話。
She's talking about go to CPS website.
Okay.
Different schools are categorized in A, B, C, and D, and different categories. You know those categories?
I'm aware of the rating. Is it 1, 2? Yeah, level 1, level 2. It's just the rating of how good the school is. My opinion is don't go with anything less than level 1. School. And even level 1 to me is kind of low. It's basically saying that the school is meeting certain academic standards. They're a good school, basically, is what it's saying.
咁所以你上到去 CPS 嘅 website 咧，佢會將啲學校咧分類分成唔同嘅等級咁啊。
I think it's the school rating.
就係嗰個學校嘅
I don't know what it's called. It's
質素啊。
And I don't know what all goes into that, but it's basically to tell parents that it's a good school.
咁其實嗰個分類咧就係話俾你聽，呢間學校係好嘅。
But good is kind of relative. It's kind
但係
of
咧呢啲好相對嘅，
you don't know how they're deciding what is a good
因為唔知
school.
佢內部咧點樣決定邊間好邊間唔好。
Yeah.
好，仲有冇問題 ？Any other question？ 係唔該，個麥喺邊度？係唔該。
Thank you for the information. You mentioned there's a 150 page of CPS school information. What exactly is it?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
You mentioned there's 150 page of.
It's 150 pages. It's called the 150 pages. It's the Chicago Public School Guide. So I can show you afterwards, but if you go to, I think it's Go CPS is the website, GOCPS. There's a tab for resources, and you can download that. I have parts of the pages here. It's a lot of information. But it's called the school guide. And it lists all the choice schools, the selective enrollment schools, the elementary ones, the high school ones. It's about 150 pages, yeah. It's called the school guide. I'm not sure if you look under maybe resources.
Yes, resources.
Under resources. You can download it, it's a PDF.
Thank you. Question number 2, are you familiar with the Blue Ribbon?
Yeah, Blue Ribbon schools it's national. It's recognized at the national level by the Department of Education. So if the school is a Blue Ribbon school, that's a pretty good school.
咁有另外一啲嘅學校咧，叫所謂叫做喺網上面可以見到嘅就係叫做藍絲嘅學校啊。
It's
呢啲咧就係國家認可嘅一種嘅好學校嚟嘅，OK，所以藍絲嚟嘅。
Yeah,
學
school.
校係 OK 嘅。
Yeah. What's he say? I didn't say that, did I? The schools have to apply at the federal level, and the federal level recognizes certain schools based on their criteria.
咁呢個係國家聯邦嘅程度嚟㗎，咁所以喺嗰度申請。
That's not CPS per se. That's more at the federal level. But they are good schools if they're Blue Ribbon.
Thank you.
Any other questions? English, Mandarin, or whatever? Cantonese? Go ahead.
I have a quick question. You mentioned about your 2 sons. The older one was sort of more calm and you can sit down and more kind of like problems. So your second child was more active physically. So, and then you also mentioned like how they were in private school, so 5th grade, and then you probably have to test them for grade 5 to 9. So how did you prepare the active one to sit down and, take a test?
Focus.
Yeah, focus.
Actually, I think because my kids started at a private school, they learned some really good habits. So it really has to do with habits. My kids, despite their personality differences, always did their homework. And they always... Oh, the translate? Okay.
個問題就係咧頭先阿 June 講到咧話佢有一個細路咧係好活躍嘅，好難坐低嚟到去做功課啊、讀書啊、考試等等。咁點有咩幫助到佢咧？咁啊 June 咧頭先開始講開就係佢因為佢好細個嘅時候，佢返個學校咧係一個小班嘅學校。
So part of it is building those habits when they're young.
咁所以咧佢喺嗰啲嘅小班嘅教學裏面咧，佢就學到呢啲咁嘅紀律。
By them being in a private school, it really helps small class sizes. I also have sat next to him. I remember 7th grade was a rough year. I sat next to him. I'm doing my work. I was going for my master's degree. He's doing his work. And I sat next to him. So I'm showing him discipline. I'm paying attention at what he's doing because he's sitting next to me. And that helped keep him focused. My kids respect me. Praise God for that. And so I think they want to honor me by doing their best. So that motivation. I do worry about him going to college though. But that had to do with building habits when they're young, you setting an example, you spending the time. And I think both my kids care about doing well. So their intrinsic motivation developed as they got older. Okay. So I think no matter the style of the student, they can learn those habits and discipline, but it will take more work if your child is active. And that's why you want to involve other people to help you. So the private school teachers, I talked to them a lot. That helped a lot. So it's the idea you surround your child with people that can help them, mentor them. Okay, and so that's why we did decide to do a youth group at UCA in collaboration with our Urban Voice. We have a youth group
咁所以點解我哋教會咧同埋 UCA 咧就一齊我哋搞咗一啲新嘅青年嘅團體。
called Summit,
咁啊，而家高中嗰個團體叫做新啊，
and we also have a base youth group.
咁亦都有一個初中嘅小學嘅一個嘅青年團體。
So the idea is that using the time that they're not in school, try to put them in environments where there are people that can mentor them.
咁所以咧，佢唔返學嘅時候，佢就能夠去到嗰個團體嘅環境裏面咧，就能夠有教練幫佢其他學。
Yeah, that can influence
咁
them.
你都俾佢有正面影響。
Because it is a long process
因為
of
咧個過程
building.
好長。
Okay.
好 ，any other questions? Billy，唔該。
Since we are on the topic of homework, some school some kids some school early years they don't have homework every day. So how would you build up that habit that you mentioned earlier? What can we do as parents?
個問題就係啦，有啲初期嘅創業班啊等等，佢哋咧好多時一放咗學就冇功課㗎，好遊手好閒。你點樣幫佢能夠學習到呢個習慣咧？
Yeah, I am a believer of homework
咁啊我哋相信咧就係需要做功課嘅，
because I think it teaches them discipline.
因為咧幫佢哋建立嗰個紀律啊。
I would say in the case of what you're mentioning, you should provide some structure for them.
咁我認為咧，
After
如果學校冇俾功課嘅話咧，你喺屋企咧應該俾少少嘅結構俾佢。
So typically, reading, they should be reading independently, set a timer.
譬如獨立嘅閱讀啦，佢需要俾個時間俾佢獨立閱讀啦。
And if they're young, you might need like a little incentive, like a reward.
如果細路仔嘅時候，俾少少嘅獎勵俾佢。
Because you're building habits. A lot of kids need an incentive.
因為你需要俾少獎勵俾佢，以佢能夠養成呢啲好嘅習慣。
There's a lot of material on the market, handwriting workbooks, they can do that.
嗰啲手寫嘅紙啊等等喺出邊買到嘅。
They can memorize Bible verses.
咁佢有啲會記下聖經裏面嘅
So you will
經文
have to kind of be like a little teacher on your
咁所以咧，你
own
翻到屋企嘅時候，你
to
好似一個
add
小
to
老師
that.
咁啦。
I really do feel that the public schools, as good as many of them are, they could do a little bit more if they're not in a gifted program or classical school.
咁我覺得咧，喺啲公立學校裏面咧，有啲咧需要做得更加好嘅俾佢哋一啲學校俾更多學習。
But it's hard because the class sizes are so big.
咁但係咧好難嘅，因為公立學校嗰啲班咧比較大啲。
So that's why you have to be involved as a parent to
咁所以
add
咧，
to
作為
that.
家長咧，需要喺家庭裏面嚟到去參與。
And typically I see with boys, their handwriting is awful.
咁啊，所以呢
Even
男
at
仔咧，
6th grade, I can't read this.
男仔咧到6年班嘅時候寫嘢都係烏哩麻查。
So you could be doing something to help strengthen their finger muscles.
咁所以咧，你要幫佢做一啲嘢，幫助佢能夠寫字。
You know, so when my kids were young, they did a lot of Play-Doh and Lego and painting. Anything that uses those finger muscles.
咁所以咧，佢兩個細路細嘅時候，翻到屋企可能會做下啲勞作啊，做下啲畫畫啊，咁幫佢咧手咧嘅肌肉能夠發展。
So it's not like homework necessarily if they're young kids. It could be some constructive play to help develop
所以唔一
certain
定咧係
things.
硬性嘅功課，係一啲嘅活動能夠幫助到佢成長嚇。
Excuse me, may I know the name of your children's for the private school?
The private school.
The private school is Poida Christian School.
嗰個培德學校。
Okay, so I heard from a mother, her son, now in the high school, went to a CPS school, and I heard her son went to private schools like Central, and she told me the private schools academic is very weak. Is that true?
So the
Wait,
academic,
I
the
didn't hear.
academic level in the CPS school, right, the public school, is
In
weak.
the
Private.
private school.
Private school.
I think it depends on what private school. My son's education was very good. And we knew that because they took an Iowa test, a standardized test. I don't go just by grades because grades are a little bit subjective. But they took standardized tests and they consistently scored well. So that in addition to the grades and conversations with the teachers, I had a pretty good sense that they were doing well.
咁嗰個問題就係聽到話有啲嘅私立嘅學校咧，細個去嘅學校咧，可能嗰個學術嘅程度係比較差。
But it is true, it's not a given. It is not.
但係有陣時咧係視乎你嗰間嘅私立學校係乜嘢嘅私立學校嘅。
So you still should research.
專嗰兩個仔去嗰兩間私立學校咧，佢嘅學術咧都係做得好好。
Yeah, you should still research even the private schools.
咁所以私立學校你就需要做家長做少少研究。
But I like the Poida Christian School for my kids because I also was working there as one of the vice principals.
因為咧當年嘅時候咧
，So I knew what they were learning, and it was accelerated.
當年嘅時候咧June 咧就喺個培德學校嗰度咧做副校長嘅，咁所以佢知道細路咧係學術上面有成長。
What I noticed with my kids is because the class sizes were smaller,
咁但係咧最重要就係佢哋
they just build really good habits.
咁因為小班咧佢哋有
And socially as well. And they both went on to Kenwood, which was almost all African American, and they did really well.
咁所以佢哋跟住去咗 Kenwood
And they loved it at Kenwood. They still have friends from Kenwood.
但係嗰度咧建立咗好多好嘅朋友。
That was their 7th and 8th grade program. And then they both went on to Jones.
咁然之後佢哋就去咗中神。
My oldest and my youngest are at Jones College Prep. And then my oldest is at University of Illinois Urbana, and they've got one of the best engineering programs in the Midwest. So they did not suffer from a private school, but it was a good private school.
Questions? Any other questions?
Did you want to go through any of that? Yeah. All right, then that's good. You could do it all in Chinese.
Questions?
Hello. My son, he loves hear the story. Just hear.
Okay.
Just what I'm reading the book for him.
Good.
Just my reading.
Yeah.
He don't want to read by himself. How I can change him? He only 5 years old.
Okay.
I just buy some just the pictures, not like the sentence. But he still don't like it.
Do you know why he doesn't like to read?
He just don't want to read by himself.
Okay.
咁呢個好問題嚟㗎，就係呢位家長嘅仔係5歲，好活躍嘅，就唔中意睇書咁亦都唔中意自己睇書有咩辦法幫助佢培養嘅？
No, he loves read story only.
佢中意，但係一定要陪佢。
佢一定要我讀俾佢。
Okay.
我一定要媽讀俾佢聽，佢先至睇。
Are they books with words? Do the books that you're using with your son, do they have words, sentences?
Yes.
Okay.
咁嗰啲個故事書嗰啲書咧都係有字嘅，好多字。
He choose by himself.
Okay.
咁係佢自己揀。
Another one is only pictures. He don't like it.
Okay.
咁係佢自己揀嘅，佢唔中意有啲有畫嘅書有字嘅書，佢更加中意，但係一定要媽讀俾佢。
Well, reading is a social activity.
咁你知道咧，閱讀咧係一個社交嘅活動。
It's possible that for your son, he wants your attention.
咁有可能咧係你個仔咧需要你嘅。
And it's his way of building or bonding with you.
佢覺得咁樣咧能夠同你建立關係。
It doesn't mean that he doesn't like to read, but he wants your attention.
都唔一定咧係特別你睇咗先睇。
Which is good. Which is good. We read to our kids every night, both of them.
係佢需要同你花時間。
And I would fall asleep sometimes, but we read to them every night. So I think part of it is the emotional bond, which is good.
咁所以咧係一個情緒嘅建立。
What you could do is gradually do it so that you set some kind of a timer and ask him to read 5 minutes by himself, and then after that you read with him.
咁所以咧可以做嘅咧就係你有個時間話俾佢聽你而家讀5分鐘我陪住你，然之後讀5分鐘就到我讀俾你聽。
So again, you're building that kind of habit.
咁你循序漸進咁樣去幫助佢建立關係。
But it sounds like because he's 5, it's really your time and your attention he
咁所以而家
wants.
5歲嘅話咧，似乎咧睇落去
And that's good.
佢想要同你建立關係。
So again, I think reading is a social thing. And I even say to my parents who don't read English very well, I said, read in Chinese to your kids. It's still okay.
咁所以咧，閱讀咧，你知道係一個社交活動嚟嘅，甚至我哋同我 UCA 嗰啲學生嘅家長講咧，就算佢哋唔睇英文都好，你讀中文、讀華文都好，都同佢一齊讀。
Because you're cultivating a love to learn.
咁因為你培養緊一個學習嘅興趣嘛。
And it's a social activity because they're doing with someone they love.
咁同埋一個社群嘅活動嚟嘅，同佢所愛嘅人一齊做。
And then for your younger one, I would say when you're looking at picture books, you could ask questions.
咁如果你係睇圖畫嘅書嘅話咧，你可以去問佢問題。
And let your child respond verbally to you because you're developing those skills.
等個細路咧嚟到回應俾你，等佢能夠懂得去溝通表達。
One more question. 我個女咧依家讀first grade, my daughter is in first grade now. I can do the homework for her, have a homework for her now, but sometimes I feel angry. So I consider whether to put it in after school program. So which one do you think is better?
Well, I'm not sure what.
First grade, yeah. I'm considering put her in the after school program because when I assisted to do the homework, I feel very angry sometimes.
Oh, you feel angry, not your child.
Not my child.
Oh, okay. Okay.
呢個好好問題啊！媽咪幫個女做功課。
係啊，有時即係家長幫小朋友做作業咧，就好激氣嘅。但係 after school 嗰度咧，好似都唔係一班人一齊做，好似效果又唔係幾好咁。但係有時我哋啲脾氣咁細個啊嘛，小朋友又影響又唔好，所以想問下意見係。呢個係一個好好問題。係，唔該曬。
呢個好好問題，因為我都發脾氣㗎，好想打佢哋㗎。所以唔係淨係你先係咁啊，我都係咁樣。The question is the mother is trying to help the child do homework.
Okay.
But because sometimes we are emotionally
parents.
Weak.
Yeah.
We yell at them.
Yeah.
So she's trying to give the consideration of sending the child to after school program.
Okay. All right. I think that's wise because I think as parents we get very anxious, emotional, and your kids will pick up on that.
所以呢個都係算有智慧嘅，因為我哋有陣時我哋嘅情緒未控制到嘅時候。
So for the benefit of your relationship,
咁為咗關係
you probably should not be too involved
你要好嚟好去，不如點佢
in that way, in the way of doing homework.
淨係呢個淨係關注佢做功課。
I would say this is the only time I'm going to make a plug for UCA. You should consider our program. Okay. We are a non-profit, so we are structured differently than others.
咁我哋係非牟利嘅機構，所以我哋個結構有少少唔同。
Okay, so that means for us, we spend money on the students.
咁所以咧，我哋花嘅錢咧都係花喺學生身上。
I'm not about getting a lot of money so I could buy a big house.
咁我哋唔係話為咗賺錢，我哋換翻好
So
啲嘅。
it's not structured like a business
咁所以咧唔係為咗
for
賺
profit.
啊。
So what we have at UCA is we have an average of 1 staff to 5 students, and we have them grouped by grades. So then they will be the ones helping with
One
homework.
group of 5 students.
1 staff to 5
1 staff to
students,
5, okay.
the
咁
ratio.
所以你個課後嘅補習嘅結構咧，就係咧一個嘅補習老師同5個學生一齊嘅。
All my staff are Christians,
咁所以咧，所有嘅老師咧都係好嘅基督徒。
so they will love the kids.
咁咧，佢哋好愛佢哋嘅學生。
And we will help them build habits
咁我哋絕對願意係希望佢能
and
夠
help them with their homework.
咁啊幫佢哋做功課。
And they're in a social environment with other kids,
咁亦都有一個好嘅
which they like.
好嘅社交環境俾佢。
And I cook a special snack every 2 weeks for them.
咁啊，所以久唔久我哋就會整下啲好嘅嘢食。
So it's a sense of community and family.
咁所以咧，好似一個家庭咁嘅。
But there are other after-school programs
咁但係當然
available.
城市裏面有其他課學班。
So you should look at all the options
咁你可以查詢一下其他。
before you decide what's the best environment for your child.
咁你就要考慮到底咩環境係最好嘅。
Hi, my daughter is 3 years old and she is attending a preschool program from a daycare. So I'm thinking, would it be a good thing for her to stay in that preschool program for another year, or having her go to a more traditional preschool program? Given I can have her join a neighborhood preschool program.
咁而家咧呢個先生嘅女咧3歲，咁佢就去緊呢個學前班，咁咧就考慮緊咧到底下一年係咪俾佢去出邊嘅公立學校嘅學前班，係由私校轉去公立學校。
I think it depends on the preschool that they're in.
咁所以要視乎佢而家嗰個學前班喺邊度先。
Some programs for 3-year-old are a little bit more child care, less academic.
咁 咁有好多嘅學前班咧，就係好多時係幫你湊晒路嘅啫，就唔係
Which is okay. It really depends on what you want for your
都唔
child.
係大問題，就係視乎我哋想個子女要啲乜嘢。
If you want your child to develop more socially, then that might be okay.
咁如果你淨係純粹係考慮佢社交上面嘅成長咧，咁啊其實冇問題嘅。
So I think it kind of again depends on what you feel are priorities for your child.
咁所以你需要考慮咧，你對你嘅子女而家呢個時候嗰個優先次序。
And you want to look around at other preschools.
咁你睇下其他學前班。
There is a variety of preschools.
咁因為有好多唔同選擇。
Some are more structured.
咁有啲比較
A little bit more academic.
有啲比較硬性嘅結構，有啲咧係比較。
So if that's an important priority for your child, I would look into
咁
that.
如果呢個嘅優先次序你覺得係擺放第一嘅話，咁你就需要。
Yeah. So, and I would visit. I would definitely make some visits. So it really kind of does depend. I think there's a benefit for those younger grades to be in a social environment, to learn how to express themselves.
咁但係咧細路仔細嘅時候咧，絕對需要有一個健康嘅社交環境俾佢，等佢懂得點樣表達。
But I also do believe there should be structure.
咁但係我亦都覺得咧，唔係要飲佢亂嚟嚇，要需要有少結構。
So it kind of depends.
So talk about your after school. Is the normal street only location?
Yes.
And also, do you provide transportation?
We do within a certain distance. We pick up at James Ward. We pick up at McClellan. We pick up at Mark Sheridan. Most of our students are from Healy.
And how do you have an age requirement?
They would need to be, I think, kindergarten. I might have one or two preschoolers. I can't remember. But we start generally at kindergarten.
And the pickup time, the latest is 6 p.m.?
Correct.
And how much per month?
I'm going to have Wendy answer that question. So, yeah, we have brochures in the back, and then Wendy can answer those questions back there.
And if no school days, they will go full day?
It depends on what day it is. So some of the school days that are closed, there are holidays, we are also closed. But some of the days, like spring break, will be open. So it really depends on the day. Because we're not a daycare center. We really are more an academic, after-school help.
So now only 90 kids. Like you said, is from 5 to how old?
We have up to, I actually have a 10th grader with us. Most of it goes up to 8th grade.
Okay.
Yeah. You're welcome to always come for a visit, and then Wendy can answer more about the cost of it.
No, that's a church.
So we rent space from the church.
You are in the second floor.
And the building next door. We use both buildings, but we're renting space from the church, from that church. It's not our building. We are praying that God will provide a bigger building for us, because I can't serve any more students. We have a waiting list for some of the grades.
So most things you do is
Homework, and we do enrichment. So like some of my kids, because their language skills are a little bit delayed, we do extra work for them. Okay, and then we do a lot of social things as well, so they can develop those social skills. So it's not just homework. Okay.
Well, once again, I want to thank June for coming to speak, give us so much information. Give her a hand.
Thank you.
By the way, we are going to dismiss, but we want to help you out. I know you have tons of questions. You can use this QR code. 你可以用呢個 QR code，你 join 我哋一個嘅 WeChat 嘅群組，我哋會有啲家長俾 tips 俾大家，或者幾時會考試等等，或者有唔同嘅資訊，我哋會喺嗰個群組裏面俾你啦。只要 scan 呢個 WeChat code 就得㗎。同埋咧後邊咧，我哋有2位嘅老師咧，可以而家幫你解答一啲嘅問題。其中一位就係一位有經驗嘅老師唔係老師係家長Jim 咧喺後邊 ，Jim 咧兩個細路咧同我兩個細路都差唔多大㗎啦大家都係OK 嘅，都係健康嘅，我同佢細路都健康，咁佢好有經驗 CPS 嗰啲 application 嘅 process 咧，佢知道好多嘅細節。如果你有 問題嘅話，你可以揾阿 Jim 啊。And then another teacher, experienced teacher we have is Samantha Chen. Back there, can you wave your hand? If you have any questions in English, especially in English, you can go to Sam. Sam is currently a public school teacher in the CPS system, so she knows a lot of the details about the school, how to navigate it. All right. And then 我哋出邊咧有一啲嘅茶點，好簡單嘅茶點可以咧俾你飲一杯嘢或者食少少嘢，然之後咧後邊咧亦都有好多唔同嘅呢啲嘅 the flyers。
Yeah, there are flyers all the way back there.
有 flyers 啊等等，咁咧就可以咧交俾大家。咁你想學音樂嘅話，我哋呢度咧開始有個音樂嘅 program， 教小提琴等等。咁呢啲咧可以一個老師嚟到去做一啲嘅安排，因為都係要養成佢一啲嘅家課嘅習慣等等。咁呢啲都係我哋 UV offer 嘅嘢。咁如果你需要多少少咧教會又好，或者一啲學校嘅資料，後邊咧 UCA 嘅資料你可以後邊去攞我哋希望你能夠攞嚟報。咁我哋能夠加入去我哋嘅群組，然之後我哋俾一啲學校嘅資訊俾你，好嘛？好，多謝各位嚇，多謝各位。Thank you very much.
Okay, so.